the major tributaries. And we do have some properties actually on all three of these major tributaries. Most of our properties, as I'll show on a map, like I said, are along the main stem. Now, the Little Miami, and you'll hear me refer to it as the state and national scenic river. The Little Miami River was the first river in the nation to be a part of the National Wild and Scenic River Program. And it was the first river in the state of Ohio to be a state scenic river. And so Ohio was ahead of all other states. They actually established the Scenic River Program in Ohio before the national program was established. So Ohio was ahead of the game in thinking that we really need to recognize the values and how special these rivers are. So today, we're at 13 designated rivers, and so they have different designations, so there's different levels that you have to meet. And so to be a wild and scenic river, that's when you get into no roads, no houses, large stretches. I'm originally from Adams County, so I've done my master's thesis on Ohio Brush Creek. There's a 15-mile section on Ohio Brush Creek that you can canoe and kayak, and it's all forest the entire way. There's no houses, roads. So that would be kind of that wild and scenic. And then you get into different designations again, like scenic recreation. The main stem here, there's no sections that are considered wild that quite meet the wild because we have urbanization, we have a lot of populations, but the entire stretch is considered a scenic riverway. So that affords us some protection with the National Park Service, so they're a big partner of ours, and then the Ohio River Scenic Program is another big partners of us. We work really closely together with those two organizations to help do projects for protection and restoration and education along the river. Now, I don't know how well traveled or as much as you've seen of the river, so I'll give you just a quick tour. These are two of our properties that are in the headwaters of the Little Miami River. So this would just be south of Springfield. So you can see the river is much smaller. This is on the North Fork of the Little Miami River. And then this is on another branch that just comes in. They kind of call it the Little Miami, but at that point it gets pretty small up there. So you can almost jump across it in some of those stages. And then as we move down into Yellow Springs, totally different feel and look as you go through Clifton Gorge. And of course in fall, I love this photo. It's just a beautiful time of year. Of course, it's not paddle. You can't really paddle the river at this point. The water's still just too low. But it's Silurian bedrock, it's just cliffs, it's just fascinating. We have a property that we bought last year that was the last private in-holding within John Bryan State Park. And so we actually just purchased that with Clean Ohio funds. It has 4 springs on that property. It's got a couple fin wetland habitats. A really neat property. We're really happy that we were able to get some funding to protect it. It had a cabin that was falling down. We've completely removed the cabin from the property. You can't even tell the cabin was there. And then we move further down. This is at the Jacoby Road launch, so north of Xenia. This is really the first public access where you start seeing folks getting into the river. Then you can start paddling the river for a large part here from Jacoby Road. This is one of our sampling sites I'll talk about a little bit later, where we do our mussel eDNA, or our mussel silo project, which I'll talk about, our eDNA, so there's sampling that we do. This is one of the sites that we frequent. Getting further down the river in the Spring Valley area, and so you're getting in here, it's very thin, riparian zones, but we're starting getting to where you got a lot more flow year round, so you're starting getting into a lot of paddlers in this section. And then we get down, when you get into more of the middle river, start getting into a lot more forest. So this is just outside of Morrow area in Warren County. So the river's getting a little bit bigger. We get down in more into the Loveland area. So again, just we still got some nice forested buffer, but just the river starts getting a lot bigger. This is the new access. I don't know if you've seen, they put a new boat ramp at Kelly Nature Preserve, and so we did a clean sweep. That was our clean sweepers that were just starting to do a 5-mile stretch of the river where they were cleaning up river debris. And then of course you get down to the lower part of the river. This is Bass Island, Great Parks property, and so the river gets a lot bigger. You go a couple, 3 miles or 4 miles from here, then you get into the backwater from the Ohio River. So things start changing. So there's just a little bit of a kind of a visual tour of the different parts of the river. I know a lot of people have never seen. I had just seen that upper part of the river 2 weeks ago when I drove up there to take those photos to see some of our properties. So you can't tell the story of the Little Miami without learning a little bit of history. And I will say I'm a little biased. My bachelor's degree is in history. My master's is in geography and landscape ecology. So you always see maps in my presentations, and you're always going to get a little bit of history. But I won't try to bore you too much. But the main history for us to understand is our glacial history, because really that's where we end up with the landscapes that we have today are the result of this glacial history that we have. And really the main thing to look here is this black line, and this is the Wisconsin glacial boundary. So the most recent glaciation that we had stopped right here. And so on this map, and I apologize, I should have said this, so this is really the major tributaries in southwest Ohio. So the Little Miami would be Springfield, just east of Dayton. So it's really this corner down here would be that watershed, but then you have the Great Miami Basin here, and then the Whitewater over here. And so the key here is that when that glacier came down, it really shaped the landscape that we're seeing at today. And so today, this yellow that you see, these are all coarse sediments and deposits. And so the rock, and you see this all along the Great Miami River, Little Miami. So the rock quarries, the gravel mines, they're all working in these areas here of these deposits. The rest of what you're seeing, it's all glacial till, so we have our farming region. But the key thing that happened with those glaciations was the change of all of our river courses. And so some of you have probably heard about the ancient Taze River Valley. And so the ancient Taze River actually flew north through southwest Ohio, actually began down at the Canal Wall in West Virginia and flew north. You can see remnants in through here of the old channel itself. And so all the major drainages all went to the north, and then this went over to the Mississippi River. Well, when those glaciations started happening, beginning around 2 million years ago with the Nebraskan Glacier, this river system got completely blocked. And so all of the drainages then actually drained in and created a massive lake called Lake Tite, which was there for 8,000 years or so. And then when the elevation of that lake got so high, it spilled over the banks, and that's what started creating the modern Ohio River today. And then all the streams, then you get the starting of the formation of all the streams now that are flowing into the Ohio River and then into the Mississippi there. And so today, what we're seeing is really then the remnants of that last glacier, which has only been about 14,000 years ago or so. So pretty modern. But that's a key thing to know, is because that's where you see just a lot of the features that we have today, and a lot of the geology and the soils, of course, all are the results of those. And of course, that has then led to what we now look at land use and land cover today, because of course, and I'll talk about in a moment, we've had then impacts for tens of thousands of years of humans, from Paleo Indians up to date to modern. And the main thing to note here, and this is a big thing that we monitor and work with today, is this yellow and orange that you're seeing. That's all agricultural land. So that's cropland, pasture, so it's soybeans, corn, wheat. And so over 80% of the watershed is agriculture. And so we work very closely with soil and water conservation districts, the NRCS with USDA, with local landowners and farmers to try to get them to install best management practices, to work through the Farm Bill to get funding for them. A lot of farmers, when they have ground that's too wet or it's in a floodplain, they'll either donate an easement to us or they'll sell us that easement, so then we put that land into perpetual protection. But that's something that we work very, very closely for, is with these agriculture producers just because we know that we've got to manage those inputs and that runoff the best that we can. And as you can see, kind of the lower part, we do get into a lot more forested areas as you get into kind of the lower part of the watershed. And so that's why, especially in the upper part, we really focus a lot on teaching about the importance of riparian buffers, forested land. Really, we try to get as far as 250 feet out on each side of any stream. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we get more, sometimes we get less, but we really try to work with those landowners of just how important that is. And we're still continuing to see sedimentation, increase of sedimentation, a lot of runoff. That continues to be a major issue to impacts to aquatic life. So a lot more work to be done. Now, of course, we understand that there's a long history, as we know, as I mentioned, all the way back to the Paleo Indians that were using the area. But then we go all the way up to Tecumseh, and this little area that we're showing here, this is outside of Old Town, again, north of Xenia in Greene County. The red, that's a property that we called the Tecumseh Preserve. That's about a 80-acre parcel that we protect right along the river. And there's our 76th, I believe, state park is now going to be opened probably next year, they're hoping, but we did a ceremony, and there's going to be a state park at this site that will be all about the Shawnee Native Americans. It'll be about Native Americans that use the area, and then the old town that was in that area of Old Town. There are some, and I've now since I didn't realize how hotly debated this was, especially among different tribes. But there are some theories that Tecumseh was born in this area, but we've learned that we can't really say that because there's a lot of people that don't believe that, especially those that are of the Shawnee tribe. And so we've learned to be very careful when we say that, because I guess there's not enough proof out there of where Tecumseh actually was born. But this is one of the sites along Massey's Creek, and there's an old spring that goes into Massey Creek into the river, that there is a lot of theories that is where Tecumseh was born. And we're lucky enough to buy a property that still has some of those Native American sites on it. But of course, we know that didn't stop with the use of Native Americans. Humans, continue to use the wonderful resource. We've been lucky enough to get a hold of some of these images, old covered bridge near Loveland. That's looking at, the bridge in Milford there. Actually, there's an old boat ramp. You can pretty much stand in that same spot and take that same picture right there today. So just amazing history. That's the bend in Milford, the big bend in the river. So just a rich history of usage along the river. Again, Milford photo from 1917. And then, of course, that leads us into a part of our legacy as well. And so the Little Miami Conservancy was founded as the Little Miami Incorporated. So you may have heard of LMI, or if you've known this organization, we still have some land that's still under LMI. We switched to Little Miami Conservancy in 2015. So we're formerly known as Little Miami Incorporated, but it was founded by Glenn Thompson in 1967. Glenn Thompson was the founder of the Dayton Daily News, and a big advocate for green space protection, river conservation. And so he really had a dream of a green corridor where people could really enjoy the river, could fish, could swim, and really build a whole community around the importance of the river. So the big thing that Glenn did is he went to Washington, D.C. and started advocating right away for the Little Miami to be on the national program. And that's how the Little Miami River became the first river in the national program, and then in the state program as well, was from the work that Glenn Thompson, as our founder, did so many years ago. So we really try to carry that dream on today, and the work has not stopped since, so 55 years now. This would be our 55th year, and spends lots of times going up and down the river doing assessments. We haven't quite found a full car for a couple years, from what I heard, but we still find lots of pieces of cars out there doors and definitely tons of tires. But, you know, just getting a sense, it started in 1971 was the first big organizational cleanup on the Little Miami River. They had over 1,000 people that got together to do that cleanup. The Ohio National Guard was brought in 1971 to work with this cleanup. That's how big this effort was. And that was really led by Little Miami Incorporated and the Scenic Rivers program and a lot of founders in that area. And so it's something that we still take a lot of pride in today to continue that tradition. And so the river, I would only imagine what it was like in 1967. I wasn't there. We don't have, photos and a lot of things. But what we do know is that Ohio EPA, when they did their first full assessment using the biological criteria, so that's when they started looking at fish, macroinvertebrates, primarily fish, to really look at the health and look at what they was called the attainment status. So attainment would be you want exceptional warm water habitat, you have warm water habitat, or if you have a cold stream, you can have cold water habitat. And so for the Little Miami River, it should be exceptional warm water habitat. It has all the features, and so that's what you're really striving for. Well, when they did their first assessment in 1982, based on the health of the fish, based on sensitive species, based on diversity, species richness, they found that only 4% of the 100 miles of the river was meeting that exceptional warm water habitat criteria. The majority of the river, there was legions on the fish, there was disease issues, there was a lot of problems at that time. Well, the biggest thing that really helped with this was the point source pollution, was the regulations on the wastewater treatment plants, regulations on, manufacturing plants. That really was one of the big things that really kicked in to start this process to get it to where we are, which 2011 was actually the last time that they did a study, and we still seen this. So now, fast forward, now we're well over 95% of the river is meeting exceptional warm water habitat. And again, that's based on assessments that EPA is doing. Now that 4% that's partial attainment, one main reason is because that mainly is the section that is influenced by backwater of the Ohio River. And so you don't really you get riverine species, you get more generalist species, and so that really impacts, and so you don't get the habitat, so you're not really able to really reach that attainment. So we won't ever really be able to get full attainment on the entire stretch because of that backwater, but this is a good testament to all the work that's been done, but something that we continue, the work still needs to be done. So to help that along, in 1967, because land protection, especially in the riparian protection, was one of the big things, that once the river was designated as a scenic river, then the work really began on trying to get as many of the riparian corridors under protection as possible. So when the organization was founded in 1967, just a little over 1% of the corridor along the Little Miami River was under any kind of protection. So there was just really no protection at all. Well, if we fast forward today, in 2020, roughly around 56% is under some kind of protection. We, as an organization, protect over 2,200 acres. We have over 121 properties all along the 100 miles, all the way up, to just south of Springfield and Selma, all the way down to near the mouth of the Ohio River. But so that is massive, and I've got a mapping layer that shows all those lands that are protected. It's a lot of county park districts. You got the Scenic Rivers program, the nature preserve programs through the state. So a lot of protections that will remain in perpetuity, and then also the local land trust as well. That we all really come together. So even though we protect property, our goal really is we want to see land under protection. So if it's better suited for a partner to protect that land, we're all for that. We don't necessarily have to be the ones that hold a conservation easement or hold the land. We actually had several properties that we turned over to Great Parks of Hamilton County. Some of those properties, I've heard some of our older board members say, "Boy, I wish we would have kept those properties. Those were good properties, but they're still under protection." So that's kind of our main point, is we want to get them under protection as much as possible. Now, an additional about just under 20% will be under future protection, and that is through working with the planning commissions. We work very closely with local planning departments, because anytime when communities are doing their planning into the future, right now what we're working with them is to have riparian setbacks. And so that way they actually will go in, and whenever they do their zoning mapping, whenever they do their zoning planning, then they actually go in and then they restrict those riparian setbacks. And that could be 25 feet, 50 feet, different communities have different widths of those, but it maintains that no one can develop within those areas. And so that's something that's kind of been a newer thing really in the last 2 decades that we've really been focusing on, is working with those planning commissions and planning departments to really get as much protection for stream corridors as possible. So even with all that, there's still about 25% that has no protection at all. And so that's still, probably in anywhere from 300,000 to 400,000 acres or more along the river that doesn't have any protection. So there still is more work to be done, and we're continuing to work with our partners. It is getting harder because land prices are getting outrageous. And so we just had a farm we were trying to protect that just got annexed into the city of Loveland, and it was a 100-acre farm that now has appraised for $7.7 million because now that it got annexed into the city, it's considered city property, and so it appraised for $77,000 an acre. There's no funding, so there's no grant funding sources out there for us to compete with a $77,000 an acre. We're seeing farmland in Greene County going for nearly $30,000 an acre now because of the development pressure. And so that's making it much harder for us because with Clean Ohio funding, which is our main resource, we can only do market value. And so whatever the market value is, but then developers are coming in and they're just making offers that you just can't compete with. So it's getting harder and harder. And so we're still working. Thankfully, we still have a lot of partnerships that we can pull resources together. And there's community, like with that farm, and some of you may be familiar with, it's Grellville outside of Loveland. That's the 100-acre farm. The community's trying to protect it, but at that price, we're basically just saying, well, we'll probably have to end up working with a developer and just protect as much as the riparian zones as we can, but we'll never be able to afford that price. So it's getting tougher, but we're not going to give up. We're still going to keep going at it. Now, I don't know how well you can see this. The main thing to see here is the red. And you can see there's all these little red pieces. So this is the main stem of the Little Miami. So it goes up here. What I have on this map, so these are county boundaries. So we have Hamilton, Clermont, Brown, Warren, Greene, Clark up here, and Clinton County here. And what you're seeing in blue, this is the 100-year floodplain. So this is the floodway along all these major streams. And the red that you're seeing, those are all LMC properties. So those are the properties that we either have. So of our 121 properties, 30 are in conservation easement, so we don't own those. But then the rest of those properties we do own through fee simple purchase. So you can see we've got a couple stragglers out here. This is the East Fork Riparian Reserve out on the East Fork of Little Miami, where we just applied for Clean Ohio funding to do a pretty large-scale stream restoration project. There's some major erosion that's happening there along the river, and so we're working with local partners to get some funding to restore that. And you can't really see that we've got a couple little properties up here on Todd's Fork as well. But as you can see, 96 or more % of our properties are all right along the Little Miami main stem. And not just that, they're pretty much most of them are all located within the floodway. And that's really kind of our focus area. So if someone, maybe has property out here, we'll still work to get that property protected, but that's usually when we'll pull a partner organization in, and they would be the ones that would either own the property or have it under easement, and then we kind of still focus, our holdings really along the main stem, which 2,200 acres keeps us plenty busy. Because some of those properties, we do have hiking trails. Most of them are very remote, right along the river. You can only get to them from the river, but we do have a couple that have hiking trails. This is our small preserve out by Cartridge Brewing. It's the old cartridge factory that's now got a brewing business there, and they've done a cleanup of all the old factory site, and we were able to get a riparian parcel there, and we have a small trail, and it's right by the bike trail, Little Miami Bike Trail. So people from the bike trail can you can access it from the brewery, or you can access it from the bike trail as well. And it's just a small little. We've got some pollinator gardens, some memorial benches, but then access to the river. A lot of our properties, again, our focus is at riparian restoration and corridor restoration. This was a project that we planted in the fall with prairie plants with grasses and forbs, light on the grasses. And this was a mile stretch of just north of Spring Valley. This was a mile stretch of corridor that we were able to get. Half of it we were able to purchase, and then the other half of the corridor we were able to get under easement. So for a mile along the river and out 250 feet is now under protection, and we've planted, I guess, what was that about? Total, that was like 19 acres. And so we planted that in prairie, and then we also planted 5,500 trees, native trees as well. And so that's something that this photo was just taken this growing season. So we'll go out and mow this winter, and hopefully it'll do well again next year. This was our crew out that was planting the 5,500 trees. So it was quite the process. And then we had plenty of volunteers, because this was a part of, it was actually a CRP. So it's a really neat program. So the Conservation Reserve Program through the USDA, through the Farm Bill, what we were able to do is we actually got cost share funding to plant the prairie and to plant all the trees. And so it cost us, around $40,000 to do the whole project. And we got around half of that, we got reimbursed from the USDA NRCS for doing this project. And since this land will be in CRP for the next 30 years, each year for 30 years we'll receive a payment that is actually equal to almost $300 per acre that we can use for whatever our purposes are. But the idea is that's an incentive to have landowners take their land out of agricultural production, put it in native vegetation cover, and as long as you keep it in that native vegetation cover, you'll receive that annual payment that can then, and the idea is then that incentive is enough that the farmer won't farm it or keep renting it out, because that rate is so much higher than, say, a $60 rental rate or so. So a really great program that really helped us then leverage that money to move on for other projects. This was a group of inner city kids out of Cincinnati that came out, and they had a blast. They came out and we installed over 400 of these tree tubes around our little tree seedlings. They loved it. They got to see a bald eagle, a bunch of garter snakes and frogs, and it was a really great experience. And that's something that we really try to do, is we try to incorporate as many volunteers and from all ages really into our projects the most that we can. We like to get their hands dirty as well. And of course, a big part of what we do is, you'll be amazed the conditions of some of the properties along the river. When we're able to purchase some of these properties, then we raise funds either through grant funding or private donations to then restore those areas by removing those properties. This house was literally falling into the river. It's amazing. Some of these, I'll drive by some places that used to have houses, and you'll think, how in the world did someone ever put a house there? Because they're typically right on the edge of the river, and they're just falling right in. And so typically this is what it'll look like when we're done. A house was right there that had the person did have a nice view of the river, but the house was falling in. And so typically, most places don't get a bench. This one did because it was close to the bike trail, but a lot of them you just will never even know that there was a house there. We've taken out low-head dam removals, so we've done taken on some pretty big projects as well. And since 1971, we've continued our annual clean sweep programs. These continue to be very popular. The river was tough this year because there was a lot of flow and a lot of water early in the year. So we had about 3 of our events that got canceled, but we were able to still have 4 of these clean sweeps, and we've still got 2 more scheduled as long as the weather holds out for us. And so for these, our partners, we typically have our partners do the upper part of the river. Our board president is outside of Waynesville. He runs a River's Edge canoe outfitter, so they do a lot of clean sweeps up there. And then we have, what are we up to now? We have 17 canoes and 6 kayaks, and so we'll use the canoes for our own river sweeps. And so this is a group, Pepper Construction, that comes out every year. They do Bass Island to Otto Armletter, so a lower part of the river. And we didn't pull out this was from last year. We only got maybe 25 tires this year. So it wasn't quite as big as that. That was quite a haul, but it's amazing. We do these every year, once a month, typically at least once a month. We try to do May to October. Again, some of those we're not, the river tells us if we can or we can't. But these have been just great programs. This is probably our main volunteer event that we do, because it's just one that people always seem to enjoy. And again, it's just amazing how even we do some sections where we'll do them month after month, and we still pull out a truck full of trash. So it's pretty impressive. Now, of course, we understand and we recognize how important the Little Miami is as a bird area, and the Audubon Society has, listed pretty much the entire main stem and then the lakes as well as a part of the important bird area. So there's well over 250 species of birds that we know that use the corridor, use it for year-round. Are probably now our most famous birds are the bald eagles, which, again, that's a really big sign of life coming back to the river, because as I'm sure as a lot of you know, there wasn't that long ago where if you wanted to see a bald eagle, you had to go to Lake Erie to see a bald eagle. Now we see them, we're starting to get real used to them because they're all over. We've got, I think the report that was put out this year, there's well over 800 nests statewide now. In the Little Miami alone, I think we're over a couple dozen nests. I just saw one in Milford. I had a landowner show me one last week, actually, that was on his property right outside actually it's in between Newtown and Milford. And so one thing that we were lucky enough to do is last fall, we installed a live camera. We installed it on a red-tailed hawk nest, which unfortunately they didn't come back, so we didn't get to see them, an osprey nest, and a bald eagle's nest. And so that was really exciting for us this year, because this was really our first year that everyone was able to watch them through the whole process. And so we got to watch these two little eaglets. Everyone got to watch them grow up throughout the summer. They have fledged. They are still hanging around the nest. Nesting season isn't quite over just yet, which we have to wait for because our cameras are down. They've been down for about a month needing repairs, and we can't do anything about it until the eagles are done with the nest. And so we've had some very unhappy viewers who have watched the life of these eagles. They were born on April's Fool Day. And so we've had well over 100,000 visitors watch the life of these two eaglets, and so I still get calls today like, you gonna get that back up? You gonna get that running the season? And we just gotta wait till next year because we just can't get up there and do anything until then. But that's something that definitely, if you're interested, keep an eye out for next year because once we get it up and running, we just have it stream on our YouTube page 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so it's been an amazing process. We've learned a lot about their behavior. The father of these, we don't know what happened to him, but almost 2 months ago, he disappeared and never came back. So the mother pretty much raised them by herself, and she was really good at catching raccoons. So when the babies were learning how to hunt, they kept bringing in baby raccoons and small raccoons. Which, for a lot of children that watch, I think we had some traumatization there from the cute little raccoon that was being shredded and ripped apart by these eaglets. But it's a part of nature, and that's what we're very happy to be able to bring, and something that we're looking forward to continuing. Our off-spray camera was really it did great again. The river flooded more than what we expected at one point, and all of our equipment, or our main power box, got underwater and flooded, and as you know, that's not good for electricity. So that's got to be redone, but we'll have it up and running next year too, and we were able to watch the life of them as well. And of course our raptor program, we do those. We've got one, I think, on the 23rd coming up. This is if you haven't been to the downtown Loveland, this is our main office. Our main office building. We're right on the bike trail. The river's right behind us. We're by Nesbitt Park in downtown Loveland, so we're right next to Nesbitt Park. And so we do a ton of programs on our side deck. And so Nesbitt Park is kind of off to your screen. And so we offer, almost 60 free programs a year out of our office. And we get, that's one thing we want to do is we want to offer free programs. And so we get grant funding, we get other funding that we seek to be able to continue to offer these programs for free. Raptor is definitely our most popular. We get typically 70 to 80 people that will pop in on a Saturday for Raptor's program. If you haven't seen their program, they do just an amazing job with the live birds that they bring, that they've rescued. And they're just so informative on their programs. I think we have one more. We do 6 programs a year with them. Typically the same thing, kind of spring to fall. So we've got one more program with them. But then we offer evening programs, weekend programs as well. So just something that we really enjoy doing. And it's pretty much all volunteer led. I'm the only full-time staff member with the organization, and we have a part-time bookkeeper that helps me, and that's it. The rest is all volunteers, as you all know very well how it's a volunteer-run organization. Something very exciting that we just kicked off this year, and extremely exciting for me. I did a lot of my research. I did my master's thesis on studying freshwater mussels, so this is one of my favorite animals. Even though we're seeing life, the eagles are coming back, the fish are doing great, the water quality, is doing well, freshwater mussels are still declining. And they're still declining at a very rapid rate. And we've talked with some of the best of the best, and they don't know why. No one really knows why. They are a long-lived species. Some freshwater mussels can live to be over 100 years. And so the impacts of land use legacy, so of decisions and destructions that we've done decades ago, may still be having impacts to these species today that we're just not quite sure what that might be. They live in the substrate, so they're extremely, filter feeders, so they're extremely sensitive. So we do know that siltation and sedimentation from runoff, we are seeing a lot of embeddedness in the substrate of areas where we have sensitive populations. So it could be not that that's a simple solution, but it could be as easy as that's what's causing the problem, is still all this increased sedimentation that's destroying their habitat. So what we've done to try to help find out what is wrong is we're partnering with the U.S. Forest Service out of the Kentucky office and the Center for Mollusk Research. And they have a 13 statewide program where they are propagating, so they're actually growing freshwater mussels in a lab. And then what they're doing is they've created, and this was our big task. These are called mussel silos. These are just concrete. You take a big salad bowl, pour it with concrete, you hollow out the inside, and there's a little chamber right here of PVC that slides down in the middle of these concrete silos, and that's where the 6-month-old, 7-month-old freshwater mussels go. And then we set these. Keeping the temperature is the most important thing, because you could kill them within a second if you change the temperature too quickly. So once we acclimate them from the lab water to the river water, we leave these mussels. We put 3 in the river per site. We leave them out there. Let's see. So June, July. So we leave them out there for about 4 months, and then we'll go back. So we actually haven't been back yet. So our first one's September 21st is when we go back for our first site. And our idea is we want to know, did they live? And if they did live, are they growing? Are they thriving? And so the idea is we're trying to get a sense of, is the water quality good enough for these juvenile mussels, which are the most sensitive of the mussels, to survive? And if we can identify places that have the habitat that meets the requirement, where these juveniles are surviving, the long-term idea is we're going to start releasing native propagated mussels back into these habitats to try to restore the populations. And we also have projects like bridge projects, dam removal projects, where you'll have freshwater mussels that have to be relocated. Well, right now, there's not a lot of protocols. Those can kind of just go wherever. I saw mussels go from the East Fork Little Miami River to the Mill Creek. And nothing against the Mill Creek, but mussels from the East Fork should not be going to the Mill Creek. They should be going somewhere else in the East Fork Little Miami River. And so that's another thing that we want to identify with ODOT, with EPA, with other organizations. Say, hey, we've identified on the Little Miami River, these are the sites that are most suitable for these freshwater mussels and for restoration. So if there are any that are to be moved, then those are the sites that they should be moved to. So we're real excited about this. And we're kind of seeing, our volunteer board built 50 of these mussel silos. So some of them are in the Big Darby, some of them are as far east as the Koskosking. And so we've really helped out the best we can with our partners. We're working with the Ohio State University and the Columbus Zoo as well. We're hoping the Columbus Zoo's Mussel Research Center can start growing and propagating mussels for our use as well. So super excited about this program, and hoping to find some live mussels at the end of the year. To go along with that program, because you can't have freshwater mussels unless you have fish. They rely on fish, so when the larvae hatch, they actually, and I won't go too far into the biology of freshwater mussels, but they actually require the fish, and they live off the fish. So you actually have the freshwater mussels. I didn't use a photo. They have actually what's called a lure. Some of them, they just have a cellulose member of skin that's, I don't know how they've done this, but they've made it look like food for other fish that they're attracting. So, and I had an old slide that shows 3 darters and a freshwater mussel, and I always ask people, well, how many fish do you see? And they always say 4, but there's only 3, because one of those is just a fake lure that the mussel has created to look like a darter, exactly like a darter. They have some that look exactly like black fly larvae. And so the idea is they have these little pouches filled with the larva Glaucidia, the larval mussels, and when the fish comes in and bites that lure, all those Glaucidia just go everywhere, and they attach to the gills of that fish, and then they feed off the dead cells of those gills. They don't hurt the fish, so wherever that fish swims, they then drop off, and that's how the freshwater mussels move throughout the stream systems. So if you don't have a healthy fish population, you will not have freshwater mussels. So what we're doing is we started last year sampling for fish, but it's very difficult to do. So we started using environmental DNA. So we actually are working with a company in Colorado where we just go out and we do a water sample. We've done 50 sites all along the river, and we just take a water sample, and then they go back and do a DNA analysis, and then they can tell us what all species of fish were in that water column. And it's pretty amazing. Right now, they're only about 65%, 70% accuracy. And so we know that we have some sites where even though, let's say we got 50 species of fish from that one water column, there could be more that maybe we missed, but at least it's given us a really good snapshot, especially of the small fish, like darters, that you can't find in traditional, sampling methods. And so this is a way that we've been able to find that we can cover a lot of ground and really get a good sense of not only the species that are present, but also the abundance, because they tell us how many cells that they found. So if it's channel catfish, which there's more cells, the fish that has more cells that we found than any other is channel catfish in the river, but that can tell us at that site which fish there were more of because we had higher cell counts of DNA sequences. So we're now moving to the next phase. We're doing this again this year just to make sure that our methods are working. But people are now working on a freshwater mussel DNA list. So our next step is when we take those same water samples, our hope is that we can sample them for fish, and we can also sample them for freshwater mussels in the water column as well. The US EPA is working on that right now. There's a couple other researchers working on that. They don't have it fine-tuned just yet, but it sounds like that's going to be coming even this year. And so next year we're hoping that that's something that we can add. And that, again, this is a part, so we look at habitat, we look at can the juvenile survive, and then we're also looking at fish diversity and richness and abundance there, just to make sure that we have the proper habitat for these freshwater mussels. And then fish is also another way, especially diversity-wise and sensitive-wise, just knowing that they're there tells us that the water quality is where it needs to be, because some of these sensitive species just won't survive if the water quality is not good enough. Then our last big research project that we're working on, because monitoring the health, because again, our main things is, restoration of habitat, protection of habitat, education, research, and then advocacy is those are kind of the main elements that we really focus on as the organization. And our other really big research component was a project that we've had going for a couple years now. This is our dissolved oxygen monitoring project. And so we were lucky enough that a couple years ago, YSI, now known as Xylem, out in the Yellow Springs areas, they donated 8 data sondes to us. And so these are multi-parameter sondes. And so you can have sensors that measure for dissolved oxygen, which is what we do. And what that's telling you is how much oxygen is available in the water. So aquatic life have to have at least 5 milligrams per liter to thrive and survive in the water. If you get water that's less than 5 milligrams per liter, you're really just not going to be able to sustain aquatic life. And so whenever we got these, we built these heavy-duty units, so we could slide the exo units inside these. You got a cinder block that we have on 8 different sites. So you can see from Xenia all the way down to Terrace Park, really is our lowest site. And we're partnering with Central State University on this project. And so they just, using our data, they just had this academic paper published just this year, I believe. And what they were doing is they actually used our data and used satellite data and created a model for predicting dissolved oxygen levels throughout the entire 100-mile course of the river. And what they were looking at is they were comparing agricultural land use versus forest versus residential versus city, looking at the different land uses and to see what impacts are those having throughout the year, to dissolved oxygen that's available in the river. Good news is pretty much our range is around 7 milligrams per liter to 12 milligrams per liter. And we've done that for 2 years now. That's kind of what we're seeing. We haven't really gotten lower than 7, and it doesn't really matter. You know, when you have high flows, you get more dissolved oxygen, the water's moving more, that's where you get those 12 milligrams, but that 7 is the key, so we're well above that minimum threshold. But this is a project that we're real proud of, and we kind of took this on kind of as a result, because, you know, as great as EPA is and the wonderful work they do, you know, they have such a big job, a lot of their data just isn't, it's just not soon enough for us. Like 2011 was the last big biological study that EPA did. That's going on well over a decade now. And so that's kind of where we said, you know what, let's just go out and get real-time data to go along with our biomonitoring project, so we can really just monitor the health of this river to make sure that there, you know, aren't things that we really need to be worrying about. So, all right. Well, that was really the last main thing I had for you. Just a couple parting images with some great blue herons. That's one of our favorite birds, and then just a sunset to end it out. So if you haven't, you know, it'd be great if you visit our website, littlemiami.org. We're getting ready to completely revamp that in about a month or so. But right now you can get a sense to see some of the programs and some of the things that we do. We have our events calendar on there. You can see any of the events that we have coming up as well. So, well, thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah.
The bike trail that runs along the Miami, is that the whole length of the Miami, and how much do you work with that organization?
So we work with, so the Little Miami, so ODNR manages so it's actually the Little Miami State Park, so it is considered a state park. So we work with the Friends of the Little Miami State Park, which is a nonprofit volunteer organization, and that's entirely what they do, is just manage that, and then they help the ODNR. So we work and partner with them. Now pretty much you can take it all along the river up to about Spring Valley. And then once you get into Spring Valley, then you start getting, like, the bike trail can continue. You can go all the way up to Springfield and make some connections all the way to Cleveland now. But as far as on the river, pretty much just Spring Valley, you can go all the way up to there. So, gosh, that's like 40, almost 50 miles, 45, 50 miles. Right. But once you get to Spring Valley, it kind of starts you know, you get up around you get to Bellbrook and then Xenia. Yeah, that was all, yep. And so that was another, and I kind of didn't mention that actually, but in the early 80s, that was another thing that our founders got involved in, was working with the state to get that, what was that, Rails to Trails was the organization. And so they jumped in right away and started getting property and really helped create that state park. So yeah, and it runs right in front of our office. So I have to cross it to get to my car, which in the spring is hard to do because there's so many people going by. It's hard to. I need a crosswalk there. So.
Yeah. Could I ask if the mussels are having problems? Do you have any otters?
You know, we haven't really seen a lot of otters on the Little Miami, and they wouldn't, even though otters do feed on, and we have muskrats and we have raccoons, and we see that they do get into, and you'll see little middens, but it wouldn't be to the scale that would be as devastating like that. We have had some people that have said they've seen otters on the Little Miami. I haven't. Historically, of course, they were there. There has been restoration efforts in the state to try to bring them back, and they are coming back on a lot of the major tributaries in Ohio. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've made it back to the Little Miami. But as far as impacting the mussels, I don't think it would be enough to where it would cause the decline that we're seeing. And what we're mainly seeing, it's not necessarily that we're seeing a decline in mussels overall. Generalized species of mussels that use generalized fish hosts, so like a freshwater drum, which is now traveled to further parts of the river. We're now seeing those mussel hosts that use the drum also travel to parts of the river, and so they could be out competing some of the more sensitive mussels. So what we're seeing is a decline really rapidly in the sensitive species. But your more common species of mussels, they're 12 or 13 species you can find pretty readily available, because they can use different kinds of habitat, and they use different more generalized hosts. So that's another thing that could be a problem too, is just the fish are changing, and that could be, because some mussels need one type of darter or one type of fish, and that's what scientists are trying to figure out right now, is we don't even quite know which species uses. We're getting better at it, but that's something we're trying to figure out too, is what are all the hosts that these species will use.
So you said we a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, how many partner organizations do you work with?
Oh gosh. So we work.
And how can you
That's
keep
a lot.
track of it all?
That's a big challenge that I'm learning how to figure out how to do. That, I think, was the superpower of our previous director, was his ability to collaborate and work. So my first month, I was trying to figure out how can I attend all these Zoom meetings and Zoom calls, because you got the Cedar Creek Collaborative, you've got Little Miami Watershed Network, Greene County Park District, Warren County Park District. I mean, the list just goes on. We work with all the engineers. So I've met with all the county engineers, I've met with the planning commissions, I've met with the soil and water conservation districts, and we want people, and they've done this for the most part. If you have anything to do with the Little Miami River, we want you calling us. And if it may not be us that are the ones who ends up helping you, but we want to be the ones that, and that's a part of kind of what we want to be, is kind of that one source for everyone, that if it involves the river, come to us, and then we can kind of help you find what it is that you need, whether it's a partner, if it's land protection, if it's an education program, if it's research. But yeah, it's a ton of municipalities, and we don't make everyone happy. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's people that get mad, because you've got one township that, maybe is not on the best terms with another township, and they want to do something to the river that the other township doesn't want to do, and so there's a lot of politics involved as well. So it's watershed management is tough, but luckily most people support us. We don't have people that have turned their backs on us, and the calls that we get is, it seems like it is working. Most of the people are coming to us if they have a question about the Little Miami, and then that's where we can send with our partners. But it's a big list, but it's all the municipalities that we tried, board of, county commissioners, township trustees, the maintenance, Sugar Creek Township maintenance guy. I know him real well because they removed log jams in Beaver Creek Township. So it's a big job. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I saw that job description when it came out," and I thought, "There's no way I would ever try to take on a job doing that much," because it is a big job. 2,200 acres. We have properties in 7 counties, but it's great. We love doing it, and I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot just, going in 9 months now. So.
Yeah. What are your top invasive alien species, plant or animal?
Yeah, goodness. Most of our properties covered. A lot of them are covered in bush honeysuckle. So that's definitely our most dominant. Lesser celandine is, and I've been doing invasive species for a long time now. It's probably the worst that I'm seeing, because it's destroying almost all spring ephemerals, almost all your earlier plants that come out, that pollinators really thrive on, insects really thrive on. Celanine's just wiping them out. And it's extremely difficult to treat. And pretty much the entire riparian corridor of the Little Miami is covered in lesser celandine. Almost starting getting south of like Spring Valley, Waynesville, going through. If you take a plane or something over it in February, March, it's just yellow. It's just all yellow. But we've got them all. We've got Tree of Heaven. We've got Bittersweet. We've got them all. But honeysuckle we can deal with. Tree of Heaven we can deal with. Celandine's the one where I don't know what you do. We're going to need nature to help us with that one, because it's just, it would take so much herbicide that it's not worth it. Then it becomes a detriment to the environment, and the treatment window is so small that you can't really treat it anyway. But that one's plant-wise is definitely the worst. EAB definitely had a big impact, but we're seeing the environments now that it's been long enough that the ash trees have died. The big thing we're seeing is the increase in log jams in the river. So in the upper part of the river where it was 40-50% ash trees in the canopy because they were younger forests, those are all dead, and those are now in the river. So we've got sections in the upper river that are impassable right now because there's so many log jams. And so we work with the townships, we work with a crew called the River Rangers, and that's who we work with to get out there. We get some funding from the Scenic Rivers program to try to remove as many of those log jams, but every year they're just actually about every month they're just right back. We'll remove it and then a new log jam will come, and a lot of that is dead ash trees that are now going into the river. So yeah, but it's reed canary grass, that's another one. We have lots of wetlands. We have probably 400 or 500 acres of wetlands, and most of them are covered, and it's so thick you kind of walk on top of it. So that's a big job, and that's, I think, partly why I'm a restoration ecologist by training. So I think that's one reason why they were interested in hiring me, is because that's kind of our next phase, is trying to do more of that, is to try to take on, especially in our wetland areas, because those used to be outstanding bird habitats. We had a lot of open water wetlands that apparently were just duck havens, and now the ducks aren't coming back because they're so choked out with cattails and reed canary grass and phragmites and all. And so we're really gonna, that's one thing that I'm gonna do I'm gonna do an ecological restoration plan for all 121 of our properties. Not this year, it's gonna take me a little while. But that's kind of my big plan, is to then start identifying what are those things that we really know that we can have success with. Yeah.
In the problem with log jams, is there any room for recognizing the environmental benefits
Oh, yeah.
of large woody debris
Mm-hmm.
and maintaining, restoring some of that? Because
Yeah.
Traditionally,
Mm-hmm.
historically, that was a major structural component of
Mm-hmm.
riparian forest.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and there's been a lot of research to show the DBH of your trees along your riparian zone and the health and stability of your geomorphology of your stream correlate together. So that is a really tricky part, because what we're balancing is the safety of paddlers with nature, and it's very, very tricky. And so the issue that we've ran in today, more so than ever before, is we have more users on the river than ever, and we've got to say this nicely, we've got users that shouldn't be using the river. So I'm trying to say nice words, and we work with Division of Watercraft. We're trying to figure this out, and so we've got people that are, I don't know if you've seen them, inflatable like unicorns, giant inflatable unicorns. They get on the river and they go down the river, and they're giant. No life jacket, no paddle, no sunscreen, no water, no nothing. And then they take that, and then they get into a log jam, and then they call the fire department, and they got to be rescued, and then the water department. We're seeing a huge increase in that this year. So now where in the past, so most of those log jams remain. And what we typically do is the river rangers will just cut a channel. So then and it's just for access. But most of that woody debris stays if we can move it. We'll use the palmeter method if we have stream restoration, where you take it and you actually stick the tree into the bank and then keep the root wad exposed for habitat. That's the main method that we use. But there is one particular area that's become, no one's died yet, but it's been close. And so that's the area that we've decided we got to go safety first. And so we're actually removing the debris out of the river on that one. But it is a case by case, because for us, we look at it for what's best for the river. And so you got to have, that is just a part of nature. And as an ecologist, I'm all for large woody debris. Everything needs it in the river, but then it's that safety paddler, that's a newer thing. And we've got on our board, and we have a Scenic River Advisory Council that I'm on. We have, canoe liveries that have been on the river for 30, 40 years, and they're like, we've never seen the most people used to just go to canoe liveries. Now they've got their own boats, they've got their own flotations, and they're getting in the public accesses on their own. And a lot of them just shouldn't be out there the way, and so we don't know what to do about that. We don't know, but we're seeing a lot more rescues because of this user error
Are
type.
those inflatable unicorns registered as a watercraft?
They're not, and so we talked to Division of Watercraft about that, and there's no regulation at all for a tube or any, because it's not considered a manned craft with a paddle. It's not a paddle sport, so there's no regulation. Because that's what we're trying to figure out. Could we say, like, you can't do this? Like, and even the law of having a PDF, you have to have that in your boat or canoe. There's no law for having that if you're on a flotation device. So that's something that we're actually having conversation with Division of Watercraft right now about, like, okay, what can we do? Because they're getting tired of it too, and these rescue units from the townships, they're getting tired of rescuing these people, and we just don't know what to do about it. So, yeah.
I know this would not be popular, but certainly a number of rivers in the west now actually have a limit on the number of boaters a day, per day, and that's it.
Yeah, and you have
And
to
they've
have
had
like
to
a
go to-
permit
they've
or
had to go to that.
We may have to get there on certain sections of the river, like the lower section. I remember crossing this summer the Milford Bridge, and I probably could have walked from boat to boat. There was that many boats in the river. And what we're seeing now is some of the breweries that are on the river, people are pulling their boats up, and we've got a photo of one brewery outside of Milford. They're in violation. There's about 50 kayaks all along, and the entire bank has been denuded of all vegetation. It's completely bare because people are parking their boats, they're going up, grabbing a beer, having their beers, and then coming back, getting their boats and going down the river. And again, that's great and all, but they're completely destroying the riverbank doing it. And so the property owner is in violation, but they're not doing anything about it. So we're battling that right now. We're involved with the Army Corps and the Scenic Rivers program to try to get them to do something about it. But we're seeing that happen more and more. And it looks like a bunch of, this is going to sound mean, but it looks like a bunch of cattle is just going in and out of and you see how those bare false banks are. That's kind of what it looks like. But it's just people getting out of their boats. So it's definitely, that balance of users, that is, and we have a lot of landowners that hate the liveries and they hate the canoe because they see all these people, they get out of their property. So it's a very delicate balance. So.
Indeed.
And I'm not sure what the future holds. I know I was in Florida not too long ago on a Rainbow River, and they're similar. It's the amount of people, no open containers, very strict on what you can have on the river, and they've had to do that because of the usage. And we maybe not the whole river. It's definitely sections of the river are more populated, but we might be looking at that one day.
The Chattooga River's that way.
Is it? Yeah, because it's becoming more and more popular.
We are the problem.
Yeah.
Another part of the problem, there was a recent effort to get a section of Mad River designated recreational scenic.
Yeah.
And the resistance from the landowners citing the behavior of the recreationists on the river.
Yeah.
A lot of it drunken and other sort of, but
Yeah.
that helped torpedo that effort.
Yeah. A similar thing happened at Paint Creek. They were real close to getting Paint Creek listed, and same thing. The landowners came and said, nope, not. No, and Scenic Rivers actually just changed their law to where they're actually going to have less protection along the river to make the law a little bit more friendlier to the landowners. Because that was the other thing that landowners are concerned about is the Scenic River law says that 1,000 feet along the river is considered a protection zone. It doesn't really necessarily mean much because it's still the landowner's property and they don't have a lot of authority, but it just means that was kind of a part of the Scenic Rivers program, and a lot of landowners are saying, well, we don't want the state coming and taking our land, so they just removed that from the law to try to make it a little bit easier to get more, course, our thought was, well, if you lessen the regulations, then is it just by name and not really a helpful law? You know, like, you don't want to make it too easy, or then it won't really mean anything. So
It'll get to the point where the landowners will come back and ask you to put a law back in place.
they could, yeah, they could,
I
yeah.
predict.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for having me. And yeah, and feel free to reach out. I do have some cards if you want to take one of those, or like I said, our information is on the website. And you know, we're pretty good to our Facebook page and all that good stuff. So just let me know if you ever need anything. Thanks for having me.
Great job.
Thank you.